Okay, my fact this week is that in 1978, chess player Viktor Korchnoi accused Anatoly Karpov of cheating using an elaborate yoghurt-based code.
Was it an elaborate yogurt or an elaborate code?
I actually added that word elaborate to kind of make it feel a bit better than it actually is.
No, it is an elaborate yogurt. It was blueberry, wasn't it?
How basic are the yogurts that you're eating day to day? You think blueberry's elaborate?
Well, anything above standard Greek is elaborate.
I've read some places that it's blueberry, but some places that it might be the even more elaborate bilberry yogurt.
Okay,
Whoa.
that really is top tier.
But basically what had happened was, we'll get onto everything that was happening around there at the time because it was an extremely controversial match. But Karpov was just playing chess, and then suddenly someone brought him a yogurt, and no one knew that they were going to bring a yogurt. Normally you would have your snacks at very specific times, but suddenly they just brought him this blueberry or bilberry yogurt, and then he made a really good move. And Korchnoi, who for various reasons was quite suspicious, thought that this must have been a code, and whatever the flavor of the yogurt was going to be, that was telling him what kind of move he had to make. And then Korchnoi, later on, he did say that it was a joke and he was trying to sort of parody the fact that people are always blaming each other of cheating. But the truth is that he definitely did make the accusation. The officials took it seriously and they changed the rules to say that everyone had to decide what snacks they were going to have before the game started, and they had to have them at certain times. So,
Jeez. So it's not the idea that maybe he wrote something in the yogurt in bilberries.
Oh, if you drizzle it in honey, that would be a nice way of doing it.
that would be clever. But no.
Right.
So basically, this was 1978. This guy Korchnoi, he's a great chess player, possibly the best chess player never to become world champion. But he had defected from the Soviet Union. And the reason he defected is because the Soviets had decided to give other people a chance as their main challengers and not let him do it. So he decided, fuck this, I'm getting out of there. And so he went to live in Europe, eventually in Switzerland. But because he was so good, he was still like the main challenger to Karpov. And so they had this game, but the Soviets were trying every trick in the book to stop him from winning. So at first they said that it wasn't allowed to take place because he didn't have a state. As in, he wasn't Soviet anymore. He wasn't Swiss yet. He didn't have a country. And then when eventually the chess authorities said, well, he's the best. He's just beaten a guy called Petrosian, who was previously thought to be the best. So they thought, okay, well, he's got to take part. But the Moscow newspapers refused to name him. They just called him the opponent or the challenger. They wouldn't say what he was called.
God.
And his family was still in the Soviet Union, and the Soviet authorities refused to let them leave. So they kind of kept them hostage because they were so upset about this guy who defected and was possibly about to become the world champion.
Wow.
God.
That is
So
petty.
were the family pissed off when he was just lounging around eating blueberry yogurt mid-match? That's a bit casual for someone whose family's got a gun held at them.
Yeah, no, I see that point. But he thought that possibly, I think, that by becoming the world champion, they wouldn't be able to get at him because he'd be world famous. And,
Yes.
The match had other accusations as well, didn't it? So Korchnoi brought his own personal chair, which he'd like to play chess in. Fair enough. You're sitting down for several hours. You want to be comfortable. But Karpov's team, they were the ones who were suspicious now, and they requested the chair be dismantled and x-rayed.
wow.
Really?
Yeah.
What were they
nothing was
expecting
found.
to find in there, you wonder?
An extra chess piece? Oh, it doesn't work like Monopoly, does it? You can't just bring an extra bishop on the...
Theoretically, if no one noticed, you could accidentally
You
just
absolutely
drop
could.
an extra bishop on there. But
Wait, I'm sure I took both your bishops. Nope, you're misremembering it. Yeah, no, you only took one.
But this one is it's a different design to the other bishops from before.
Well,
It looks like a bit of a chair leg, to be honest. The paranoia looking into this of chess players and what they must go through. I mean, if you were playing a game, it feels like half the game is just looking out for ways in which the other player is cheating. There's a yogurt, there's a man standing over there, there's a chair. Like, which one of these are giving him the details?
Yeah.
the man standing over there is a really good one. Are you talking about the French team in 2012?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So in 2012, there was an Olympiad in Russia, and there were accusations that the French team were managing to get the messages to the actual player by standing in prearranged spots behind the board. So I'm not sure of the exact code, but it's like, if I'm standing over here, then use your knight. Or if I'm standing over here, there's a great move that you can't see with your bishop or whatever.
Did they not all stand in the exact order of which the chess pieces are on the board? Like two of them were on a horse.
Yeah, one of them had a little mitre. That would be really fun. One of them's reading some porn. And
Why is your manager only walking diagonally? What's going on?
why is the queen here?
And they never proved that, did they? They often don't sort of prove it. So that's still an accusation, we should say. I don't think the French team were found guilty of doing that. But it does make you think, is it not, after a point, easier to just play the game well than to memorise this very presumably quite complicated code of standing formations?
The problem is that computers are better than humans now, right? And so if you can somehow get a computer to tell you what to do, then you're going to be able to be even the best human. And so that's why cheating now is even more of a problem than it ever has been before.
Although I listened to a More or Less podcast, the Radio 4 show More or Less, and they interviewed the head of research at chess.com, who was saying it's quite interesting now spotting cheaters who are cheating with computers, because computers play in a completely different way to people. So he was acting like anyone could tell the difference straight away, which I imagine we couldn't. But he was saying, you can tell after a few moves if someone is suddenly using a computer. And the key difference is that computers don't plan. They don't have a memory of the move that preceded, and they don't have a long-term strategy. And so when it comes to a move, they act like they've never, ever seen the board before, and they just do what's the exactly perfect move for that moment. Whereas human beings, we have a plan, and then we want to stick to it, even if sometimes circumstances happen that mess with the plan. So, for instance, it's very unusual for a human to willingly take back a move in chess. Because if you've made a move, you don't want to retract it. A computer got no compunction about that. Just do it when it wants to, when it sees it's the best move.
The thing about retracting your moves with computers, that's like where you almost go back to your previous position, right?
Yeah.
Because the retracting moves that you or I might have a problem with if we were playing chess would be if I moved my knight to a place and then I took my finger off it and then I go, no, I want to take that back. Right. And that actually did happen with one of the greatest chess players of all time, which was Garry Kasparov, when he was playing against a woman called Judith Polgar. And she is probably the greatest female, she almost definitely is the greatest female chess player that's ever played. And if she'd have beaten Kasparov in this game, it would have been the first time that a woman had ever beaten a world champion in a game of chess. And he moved his knight into what would be a bad position. And then he took his finger off it and he went, no, I didn't take my finger off it. And he put it back. And then he ended up, I'm not sure if he won or tied the game. Eventually, she carried on. She became the 10th best player in the entire world anyway. But that could have been such a big moment of the first woman beating a grandmaster. Did you guys read about her, Judith Polgar? She's amazing. So
No.
her father was called Laszlo Polgar, and he had 3 daughters, and he trained them all to be chess players. And it's one of those stories which kind of half sounds a little bit like, he's really forcing them to do this and it's quite bad. But then on the other hand, they all loved it. And whenever you interview them, they were all like, oh, this is what brought our family together. We all absolutely loved it. And so his daughters, Susa, Sophia, and Judith all became grandmasters eventually. Judith could beat her father by the time she was 5 years old. At 15, she was the youngest person, male or female, to be awarded a grandmaster title. And then eventually she played against Kasparov and should have beaten him, but wasn't allowed to because of that. And there was a great interview with Susa when they asked her about playing against men. And she said that she'd won loads of matches, but she'd never won against a healthy man. After every game, there was always an excuse. I had a headache. I had stomachache. There was always something. So.
Well, I think that's a bit eggs in one basket, training all 3 daughters to play chess. If it was up to me, I would train one to play chess, one to play drafts, and one to play snakes and ladders. And I would hope that one of them in the field would become the world champion.
Yeah, the problem with snakes and ladders is it is literally all down to luck of the dice, isn't it? There's literally no strategy there at all.
A lot of people say that it's just luck and there's no strategy, but I would say...
Actually, I do remember when I played against you, there was that guy stood in the corner with a ladder in front of him telling you what to
do. No, you say that about snakes and ladders. I was reading this article that really annoyed me because of what you've said. So about cheating in games, it was in the LA Times. It was about whether you should let your kids cheat in board games. And it was written by this guy whose 4-year-old daughter cheats at snakes and ladders by like climbing up the snakes or jumping forward to the ladder bit.
Wow.
And the gist of the article was you should let kids cheat because they don't really get a sense of fairness and ethics till they're 7 or 8. And before that, they're just developing their creativity. But the question was framed at the top as, you're playing snakes and ladders, she's cheating. Do you insist that your children play by the rules and then trounce them every single time? Or do you let them cheat? And I was like, Snakes and Ladders is the one game where a 5-year-old does have a chance of beating you. Well, it sounds like the dad is cheating all the time.
That's why I never let my little sister play me at Snakes and Ladders, because she would have a chance of beating me. Literally, I'm like, no, we're going bowling.
So
We're doing the test your strength machine again.
That was until she was about 7 years old.
Chess.com, they have chess detectives, which I love. They've got 6 chess detectives. And I didn't realize how big chess.com is. I mean, it's absolutely massive, this global site. Since March, the number of accounts they have closed for cheating specifically is 85,000.
Jesus.
Now, obviously, that might be some people setting up new accounts after they get busted the first time, but that is a lot of people cheating around the world.
Well, apparently it's 30% of chess masters.
Chess masters?
Again, according to this guy, exactly, the people you'd thought should really be above it. But they quite often play matches on there for money or tournaments. And 30% of them, he says, he's had to give a warning to. And he says there's a system where you give them one warning and you say, our computers have seen that you're cheating and using a computer. And then he says the vast majority of them don't do it again, which he said as though they're really being noble and realizing they've done wrong. But presumably they just think, oh, shit, they've got detectives on this one.
In 2013, there was a Bulgarian player called Borislav Ivanov, and he was forced into retirement due to a scandal. He walked into the arena and they wanted to search him for an electronic device. And they said, can you take off your shoes? And he said, no, my socks are too smelly, so I refuse to take off my shoes. And they said, right, okay, well, you're disqualified. And basically you won't be able to play in any international competitions anymore.
Wow.
Jesus.
Has he stuck with that? Has he just said,
he doesn't
I was
play
bored
anymore.
of chess anyway? Yeah.
He doesn't play anymore. And that's maybe because he has such smelly feet. It's possible that he has such smelly feet,
He also, I think in that same tournament, that he had a few suspicious moments, and another one was where a competitor spotted a suspicious bump under his shirt and grabbed it, which seems like an incredibly awkward moment if you've got that wrong, but said it was indeed an oblong object similar to an MP3 player, but then somehow didn't catch it. I don't know if he ran away into the crowd or something.
My torso, he said, is so smelly that...
Well, there's that story in 1993 at the World Open where there was a guy called John von Neumann, and he came in and he was playing. He was an unrated newcomer and he was wearing headphones the whole time, suspicious already. And he drew with a grandmaster in this tournament. This is an unrated player. And everyone kept pointing out that he had a suspicious bulge in one of his pockets, which appeared to make soft humming noises and buzzing sounds at real pivotal points in the match. And so they got him afterwards and said, listen, we think there's something dodgy going on here. And one of the tournament directors quizzed him about chess. And it turns out he didn't even have the basic fundamental knowledge of how to play chess when asked the basic questions. Yeah, so he was sent in. He had someone on the headphones just telling him what to do the whole way through.
The knobbly one. No, not that one. No, the one with 5 knobs on the end.
Don't take your finger off it once you've touched it.
I want to see the Michael Spicer, the man in the other room.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that there are more people alive today who have been world chess champion than there are people skillful enough to carve a knight for use in a world championship chess match. Amazing.
What are the numbers? What are we talking
incredible.
Well, the numbers are 10, who can do the knight, This is according to a video which I saw, which was posted by Business Insider, called Why Championship Chess Sets Are So Expensive. As part of that, they said there are only 10 people alive who can make the little horses that you use in chess. And so I thought, I wonder how that compares with people who have won the World Championship. And I went onto onto Wikipedia and looked at the list of the people who are still alive, and there's more than 10. There's a dozen, I think.
How good do these things have to be? I mean, because I would have thought it's quite easy to carve a knight. Most professional whittlers I know, which is a lot, could probably do a passable chess knight. What's so special about these ones?
Well, you take all of the whittlers. Some of them can do it, some of them can't, and you go down and down and down, and eventually you get the 10. Yeah, you got it, Andy. You can see where I'm going there. No, they're made. These knights are made in a place called Amritsar, which is in India. A very specific factory makes them. They only make 250 per year. One night to kind of whittle it down takes 2 hours, and it takes 5 to 6 years to learn how to make this knight. All the other pieces take about 4 to 5 months to make. And so if you were to buy a very, very high-end chess set, the knights are worth approximately 50% of the entire set. The value comes from just the knights. That's what this video
funny.
says. Yeah.
And it's about $500 for one of these sets.
Yeah.
They sound. I think I read the same piece, James. It says this, that the blocks of wood that they use for the pieces were once large trunks, dried for 3 to 6 months, cut down and shaped to the necessary size, which does make it sound like they're using one large tree trunk. Yeah.
Knock down a giant redwood for one pawn.
They are really beautiful to watch them being carved on the lathe, and it's a little bit like watching pottery. It's that kind of beautiful sort of hypnotic view of this thing taking shape. But I have to say, it's all nonsense, isn't it? Because I mean, I saw this short film, and at one point they say, "Oh yeah, it helps these grandmasters to not make any mistakes." That's just nonsense. Grandmasters, they can play blindfold. I mean, you literally don't actually need the chessboard or the chess pieces. They can play blindfold. What is this?
I don't know what you're
total
talking
nonsense,
about.
exactly.
The video, I've drunk the Kool-Aid, and I believe this. It's they say that because if you don't make the chess pieces properly and the king isn't the tallest piece, then you might accidentally move one of the other pawns, maybe thinking it's the king.
Wow.
Maybe, or if they're not weighted correctly, they might fall over, and you accidentally kind of resign your. Okay, it's bollocks.
No, it's true. No, the thing about chess players is that they're very stupid people, and James, that falling over thing, I read that too. It's that if you accidentally knock your piece over and then you press, because they're playing timed against each other in some matches, so you knock a piece over and then you press the timer to move it onto your opponent's turn, and then you pick your piece back up, you can be disqualified from the whole match because you're technically eating into your opponent's time there. And that has happened recently. There was a game in 2016 where a grandmaster, very good chess player, lost because he dropped his queen and then did that.
Really?
Yeah.
I know we're claiming that these 10 people who can make the knights are the only people who can make a knight that can successfully stand up.
If you can't feel the bridle on the knight is positioned correctly, it'll completely throw off your game. That's why Kasparov lost against Deep Blue. So there was a slight discrepancy in the reins.
I want to see the chess grandmaster's rant when he, like sort of a tennis player with a broken racket, when he seizes a knight waving at the umpire. What the hell is this shit?
I would love to see these artisans, these craftspeople from Amritsar. I would love to see them wrestle with classic Prussian wargame chess crossovers, because there are some amazing kind of chess mutations from a few hundred years ago that I think would pose a real challenge. So any of you have heard of Grosses Königspiel, which is a 1664 chess variant? Well, I mean, you can play with a number of players. There's a 6-player variant. The board looks a bit like a snowflake. But the 8-player variant, I think, would give
Everyone gets very sensitive in that game, don't they? Yeah, no one wins. It's just a tie at the end, regardless.
So the 8-player variant has 240 pieces. It has pieces including the king, the marshal, the colonel, the captain, the chancellor, the herald, the chaplain, the knight, the courier, the adjutant, bodyguards, halberdiers, and there are private soldiers. And 240 pieces in total. But that is nothing. The Duke of Rutland's chess variant has the concubine, which is a rook-knight mix. And even that pales into insignificance compared to the game that was developed by Johann Christian Ludwig Helwig. He was alive in the sort of late 1700s, early 1800s. He was a successful academic. He taught maths to Gauss, the most brilliant mathematician of all time. Actually, in fairness, he sort of said to Gauss, to be honest, you don't need to bother turning up to the lectures because he seemed to have it all sorted. He collected so many insects it formed the heart of the University of Berlin's Museum of Entomology. And his chess variant, which is called Kriegspiel, which means war game, it includes the elephant, which is a rook-knight combo, the jumping bishop, which is a bishop knight, the jumping queen, not to be confused with the dancing queen of ABBA fame, that's a knight queen. It contains 40 pawns, 4 rooks, 4 bishops, 30 knights, work on that one in Amritza, 6 queens, 5 jumping queens, 8 jumping bishops, and 7 elephants, and the board is up to 2,000 squares.
And what move does the partridge in the pear tree make?
That's the hardest to carve, actually, the partridge.
That is absolutely amazing. Do you think he invented this amazingly complicated chess game because his main job was teaching Gauss how to do maths? And he's like, I have so much spare time now, I might as well collect every single insect in the world. And
I mean, it must take forever, a game.
I think it does.
I suppose this was before TV, wasn't it? But it feels like there's no need to make chess more complicated. It's already quite challenging for most people.
So there was this movement to make chess more like actual war. Because chess is quite stylized, really. I mean, you're not going to learn that much about military tactics from playing chess. So this is a Prussian thing. They're trying to teach their young officers how to make decisions on the battlefield. And so there's this tendency towards more and more complex versions of chess. And in the end, they kind of went to these war games or role-playing games, but you've got different pieces, you've got different terrains, and they're trying to train people how to make military decisions.
It's good. I think it's really good because I do think that, war game exercises are they are good up to a point, but there are never enough concubines. It's not realistic without the concubines,
Or elephants. It's the elephants and concubines that really make a war.
Yeah,
I thought Chancellor was a weird one as well. What does he do? Like, he just does some photo ops and then takes 20% of all your money.
Well, the thing is about chess, didn't used to be military at all. And I don't think it should be. It used to be sexy. This was back, and actually the person who ruined it and turned it into a military game initially was the Queen, sadly. So we've talked before about how the Queen was introduced at various moments in history in various different countries from about 1400 onwards, 1300 onwards. But instead of a queen before that, you had the vizier, as in Jafar. And the vizier couldn't move as broadly and widely as the queen, was much more limited. And it made chess a much slower game. And so I was reading that back in medieval times, it was a completely gender equal game. Women and men played an equal amount. And it was more a thing you'd have and play throughout a day at a soiree over drinks and chats. And it became really associated with romance and sex. And because there were lots of stories of people falling in love over a game of chess, opponents would fall in love. Oh, wow. In 1400, there was a famous book at the time called The Edifying Book of Erotic Chess, which sort of talked about...
That does sound edifying.
Yeah, is that why we call it porn?
It is, yeah. That's correct. That's why they're all naked if you look closely at the pawns. But yeah, then the Queen came on board and it became very martial and competitive and serious. Wow. And it was thought to be unsuitable for women. Do you know the 10 rules of whittling? No. Have you memorised those, everyone?
I've only got the first 4. Sorry.
Well, 40%. It's just about a pass. This is according to master carver Chris Lubkeman, who actually has the Guinness World Record for what he describes as the smallest rooster in the world on his YouTube channel.
What's another word for rooster? I just can't think of any. Because I'm pretty sure I have that record.
I wondered why I had to be over 18 to access that video. It's not the smallest rooster. It's not even a thing. It's the smallest wooden carved thing in the world, according to Guinness. It's a tiny little rooster, 1/8 of an inch tall. Anyway, he's an amazing whistler. His 10 rules is rule number 1 is actually make sure your knife is sharp. Rule number 2, any guesses?
Don't run with scissors.
You're actually close. It's your knife must be really sharp is rule number 2.
Oh.
What? Is this fight, Anna? Is this Fight Club?
Could I just check? Are the other 8 rules also to do with sharp knives?
I'm so glad that you've saved me having to read all of the other rules. They're all different ways of saying, before starting to carve, check to see if your knife is sharp. If your knife is really sharp, it'll cut much better. Rule number 10 is refer back to rules 1 to 9, which are indeed different ways of saying have a sharp knife.
Very good.
So whittlers out there, take note.
Modern board games often have these little carved wooden pieces. They're quite simple. They look a little bit like if you carved the sign for the gents' toilets, the little man.
Oh, yeah.
If you carved those into wood and painted them different colours, that's what they look like. Does anybody know what they're called? There is a term of art for these things.
Wait, for what? For modern chess pieces?
Little man.
Well, modern board game pieces, not chess pieces, just board games in general. They're called,
I didn't even know what they were, but no, go on.
They're called meeples. Which is a sort of shortening of my people, and so meeples is a board game thing, and there are cafes based on meeples and meeples clubs and so on. But I think
so there are like tiny cafes that meeples attend.
Yeah, but this one I'm speaking to you from Oxford, and there's a cafe about 2 minutes walk away from me called Thirsty Meeples, and you can go, you can have your hot chocolate or your cup of coffee, and you can play board games surrounded by meeples. But I reckon this whole kind of chess piece carving thing, it's basically a conspiracy by Big Meeple. Because there is...
Wait, hang on. No, Tim. Big meeples are just people, aren't they?
You could be right. No, you're absolutely right. You've caught me there. Anyway, it's a conspiracy. I'll figure out who's behind it sooner or later. Because there's a problem with a lot of games that if you're trying to make money selling the game's actually quite cheap, and you buy a game like chess, it just costs a few pounds, and then you can just play forever. So how do you make money? And so there's this increased focus on getting very, very fancy pieces, very expensive pieces. So these guys in Amritsar, this is an example of this. But I think the most striking example is Games Workshop. So Games Workshop is this company that I remember from the 1980s when I was a young nerd. Yeah. Used to sell Dungeons and Dragons and used to sell all kinds of games. And then they basically got taken over by a division of the inside the company called Citadel Miniatures, which just made toy soldiers and miniature figures. And these miniature figures were so profitable that during lockdown, Games Workshop had a higher profit margin than Google. And Henry Cavill, the actor who plays Superman, described these little miniature figures as plastic crack. So that all the money is in the pieces. The money is not in the games.
That's true. I mean, I used to collect those pieces, and there were some which were simply unaffordable for me with my 14-year-old's budget.
Really? I used to collect them a little bit, not much, but I was always really scared that I was going to die of lead poisoning because there was lead in them. And I don't know, someone had once told me that you could die of lead poisoning, and these pieces had lead in them, and I was convinced that I was going to die.
No, I think
you're eating them.
No, but I was like, because I was painting them and stuff, and I didn't want to lick my fingers and stuff. Yeah,
and you're close and you're huffing away, huffing away over a little.
Well, the paints used to be water-based. Well, the paints still are water-based, so you'd sort of paint, and then you'd kind of lick your paintbrush to get a fine point on the paintbrush, and the paint is non-toxic. But you're painting these lead figures, so they probably were very dangerous. But anyway, they're all made of plastic crack now, as Henry Cavill puts it.
You're all a bunch of crackheads. It's the least cool kind of being a crackhead, and being a crackhead isn't cool. I want to emphasise, but this is even less cool.
It's so annoying when people tell you that. So, just like you were saying, James, with the lead and the paint and the danger thing. I always remember my friend Christopher when I was about 18, telling me that if I kept drawing on my hand, I'd die.
Yeah.
Because the ink would get into my bloodstream somehow. And I just wanted to say a big old fuck you to Christopher. I've been writing notes on my hand since then, and I'm as fit as a fiddle.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that explains something about that.
It could be like
you conceal.
It could be a John Crandon thing. It could be just a matter of time. You're fine, and then suddenly pustules and you drop dead.
Here's one thing on people who carve wood for a living.
Oh, yeah.
You guys, I'm sure, have heard of grindling gibbons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who hasn't?
But just for anyone who's...
It's a horrible thing you do to great apes, isn't it? It's actually been outlawed in most places.
It's such a weird name. You're right. I think he was Dutch. He's the most famous wood carver in history. And I know that he's quite an obscure figure now, but in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, he was catnip. He's all over the UK because he worked in England mostly. There are these incredible wood carvings. I've seen some of them, and they're amazing. As in, he could do the fuzz on a peach, but carved in wood. You know?
Wow, really?
He's called the Michelangelo of wood by some people. And
by his mum. Who he lives with.
Anyway, one of his crowning. He was extremely famous.
It's not fair. Why would somebody who whittles be regarded as less admirable than someone like Michelangelo who works in stone? It doesn't make
exactly. Get this. Could Michelangelo do this? I bet he couldn't. In 1690, he made a wooden cravat.
I have a wooden bow tie.
It's completely different.
Is it?
You really deflated Andy there.
A bow tie is designed to be stiff. You could any chump can make a bow tie out of wood. Just two cross bits of wood, nail it together. Fine. The cravat, the most flowing of all items of clothing.
I quite like how you just accepted that I have a wooden bow tie.
Oh yeah. Sorry, there's a much better point.
No,
what?
I just went to the place in Portugal where all the cork trees are, and they sell a lot of merch, and one of them is a bow tie, and I thought it'd be really cool, but I've never found the outfit to go with it. I must admit.
Weird, so weird.
You need the full wooden suit to go with it, don't you? Really?
Well, James, if you stand next to a donkey and you put on your wooden bow tie and you make it rotate, Anna will think you're a desert island.
Okay, my fact this week is that the head of the International Chess Federation believes that chess was brought to Earth by aliens.
Wow. And he should know.
Yeah.
What kind of evidence does he have for that?
He has first-hand evidence because he was abducted by aliens in 1997. And shown around the galaxy, and they told him the Earth is set to collide with the planet Nibiru, killing us all if mankind does not cleanse its aura by playing more chess. That was in an interview in Time magazine. That was.
What's his name again?
Mr. Ilyumzhinov. He's a politician as well. He's the head of the Kalmykia province of Russia, and he has friends such as Chuck Norris, and he was friends with Saddam Hussein.
Was he friends with David Icke?
He should be.
Why do these political guys, all these sort of like eccentric characters, always have an American action hero as a good mate? They all have, Chuck Norris being his mate, or like Kim Jong-un having Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, I guess it's like a trophy
American mate for some kind of buddy movie that may erupt one day. Any biography movie done of a big political leader of our time is effectively going to come out like Rush Hour. Hey, just with Chuck Norris, just quickly on him, I read this thing whereby he, despite being in violent movies, hates that his kids would have to watch violent movies, but they all want to watch his movies. So he does this thing where he edits out all the fight scenes from his movies and lets his kids watch that. And I cannot think of anything more painful than watching a Chuck Norris movie without the fighting scenes.
Yeah.
Do they think that he's in a load of 26-minute long feature films?
Just back to this guy, Mr. Ilyumzhinov. He said that aliens gave us chess. That's one thing. But he also said they gave us something else. Anyone know what it is?
No.
Is it a technology or an illness or a body part?
No. Sweet corn. He says they gave us sweet corn, but he says it was a different civilization that gave us sweet corn.
Maybe the Aztecs or the Incans or something.
And are they threatening the world with destruction unless we eat as much sweet corn as humanly possible?
Do you know what? He's been more asked about the chess donation from space than he has the sweet corn. I can't find anything else.
You know what, guys? I was really hoping this was going to be about chess rather than aliens.
Let's go into chess. Let's go into chess.
Can I tell you a fact about chess?
Yes, please.
Okay. In 1999, Garry Kasparov, obviously great chess champion, played the world at chess.
Oh, yeah.
He played 50,000 different people from more than 75 countries in one game. So they all submitted votes on what move they should take as a team.
Yeah.
And whichever move received most votes was the move that the world made against Garry Kasparov. After 4 months, the game ended at move 62, when 51% of the world team voted to resign.
Wow. Terrible. Wow, 49% must have been livid.
Yeah.
But they weren't even acting on that. So 50,000 people, but they weren't even on their own, even as 50,000. They had 4 chess experts guiding them, acting as world team coaches and suggesting moves and strategies. So even with expert help, 50,000 people cannot beat Garry Kasparov.
Garry Kasparov, when he obviously had the 2 matches against Deep Blue, the supercomputer, the latter of which was so he won the first one, which was a set of 6 games, and then in 1997 he played another set of 6 games, and in the first game of the 6 he won, but he basically had a mental breakdown after it had finished because the computer had done what he thought was a completely ingenious move that even he couldn't understand. So Garry Kasparov was winning, but the computer moved a rook in a really random position, and Garry Kasparov couldn't work out why that possibly would make any computing sense. So suddenly he went, oh my God, I can't work out the logic of what this computer is doing. It must be better than me. That was the last game that he ever won against the computer because he became so frightened that, this has superhuman intelligence. And actually, one of the computer engineers admitted to Nate Silver 15 years later that there was a bug in the computer and it just resorted to randomly moving a piece totally at random.
It would have been better if someone had just moved the horse in the wrong way or something.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yes, that would have been more amazing.
Just knock the table over.
Oh my God, you can move a horse 3 up and 5 across? Why did no one tell me this?
Yeah.
He thought it was a sign that there were humans intervening with the computer.
And he thought they were cheating.
Just about your thing about Kasparov versus the world, Andy. I can go one better on that, which is the first ever world chess champion was called Wilhelm Steinitz, and he was a great player and he beat everyone, and then he started to slightly lose his marbles a little bit, and he challenged God to a match, and he would play God quite often. And he quite often beat God, and he got so much better than God that he would start giving God like a pawn extra to try and make it a bit more even.
Wait, when you say he beat God,
yeah,
how was God playing?
Well,
exactly?
I think he was like maybe slightly schizophrenic, so he was getting the moves himself and go, oh, God did that, oh God, you idiot. And so he would beat God, and very sadly he ended up in a mental asylum and died penniless. But he was the first ever chess champion called Wilhelm Steinitz.
There is a debate about whether chess makes you mad or not. There's a really good Nabokov quote about the fact that everyone who plays chess must eventually go insane. But my favorite chess player is this guy called Natan Sharansky, who is now an Israeli politician, I think, but he was a human rights campaigner in Soviet Russia. And he was a childhood chess prodigy, and he was put in a Siberian prison in 1977 for 9 years. And he said chess kept him sane. So he was in this tiny freezing cold cell, was hardly given any food. It was completely dark. There was absolutely nothing in the cell, just stone. And he just played chess in his head against himself for 9 years and said that was the only way that he survived it.
Wow. And that kept him sane. Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's in Iran. They banned when you get the pawn to the end and you can turn it into a queen.
Yeah.
I think they banned that move because it promoted bigamy. Because then the king had 2 wives.
Surely it would be promoting transvestism.
Well, you're assuming that pawns are men.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Are they?
I don't know.
I'm comfortable with that. Queens used to only be able to move less, like they could only move one space
like
in any
king.
direction. Yeah, they were rubbish. They were the worst. And then they could move like knights for a while for some reason, which is kind of bizarre because you would have thought knights could move like that because they're horses. Queen could do it too. That's where we get...
Sorry, just your logic is like, well, they're on horses, so that makes sense.
Actually, it's never struck me that doesn't make sense, does it? That knights can move too.
Horses can jump over. I think a horse
they can jump, but there's no
piece.
particular reason why a horse would move 2 forward and 1 to the side at the same time.
They're the evil Knievels of the chess world.
Do you guys, when you play Monopoly, are you going, okay, I'm going to get the car because that moves faster than a hat? This is a bit too much logic.
I'm going to get the battleship, blow up the iron.
Yeah.
Have you seen they brought out new pieces for the Monopoly board?
Yeah, they brought in a cat last year, didn't they?
Yeah, they've got rid of the iron, or the old boot possibly, and replaced it with a cat.
But sorry, go on, Andy.
Sorry, just on the Monopoly thing. The cat won a vote, a popular online vote, and it beat a robot, helicopter, diamond ring, and a guitar. And one of the guys from Hasbro said, I think there were a lot of cat lovers in the world that reached out.
Yeah.
They're always bloody reaching out.
Robot should have won.
Robot should have won.
King Canute, who we all know, Turn Back the Waves. He once had a chess game with an earl of his called Earl Ulf. And he did a move, I think it was a knight's move, but he realised it was a bad one, tried to take it back. Earl Ulf said, no, you can't do that. It turned into a massive argument. Canute tipped up the table, went off in a huff, and then had Earl Ulf killed.
Wow. Napoleon got really angry playing chess. Well, according to one account, Napoleon got really angry playing chess against the Mechanical Turk, didn't he?
Yeah, we should explain who the Mechanical Turk
Yeah,
was.
so the Mechanical Turk was a fake chess machine that existed between 1770 and 1854, and it was this robot that was dressed up like a Turk, and it managed to beat Napoleon, Franklin, Babbage, other famous people at chess, and it sort of toured the globe, and it was this Turkish man with a huge box on which he had a chessboard that he apparently played by some robotic power. So I don't know why no one ever said, hey, can this Turk play without the huge box? Because inside the huge box under the chessboard was obviously a guy who was controlling the chess pieces.
And why does that
underneath.
box keep sneezing?
Yeah.
What?
Maybe this is why the robot's not allowed on the Monopoly board. All games it's been banned from.
But yeah, at one point Napoleon, I think, wrapped a shawl around the Mechanical Turk's head so that he wouldn't be able to see the board, which obviously didn't make a blind bit of difference.
There was another famous chess player who always had excuses, and he'd lost 5 games in a row. He was 5-0 down, and he said, the first one I lost because I had toothache, and the second one I lost because I had a headache, and the third one I lost because I had rheumatism in my legs, and the fourth one I lost because I just wasn't feeling very well. And then they said, well, why did you lose the 5th one? And he said, what, am I expected to win every game?
That was like when David Hay, after his match where he lost, he's like, I twisted my ankle this morning, and that was his excuse. No, he broke a toe. He broke a toe. Oh, I broke my toe, and that really affected how I punch with my arms.
I just wish I'd learned. Oh, is he a boxer?
What, is it? Yeah. Oh, come on, that's all right.
Yeah.
What, your toe?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't move.
It can be really painful.
No, he was fine.
Can I just say, if David Hay's listening, I believe you.
Ooh, me too, actually. Yeah. Sorry, David.
I don't, but I don't know who you are.
I thought you were a chess player.
Come on, let's bring weedy chess player Hay over here.
This is rash, guys.
I'll break his other toe.
Hello and welcome to More or Less on the BBC World Service. We're your weekly guide to the numbers all around us. I'm David Edmonds. Let's start today by playing a game beloved of sports fans. Is Lionel Messi a better football player than Pelé in his prime? How about this one? Is the current world chess champion Magnus Carlsen a stronger player than the most famous chess player in history, Bobby Fischer? Well, that's a question to which there may be an objective answer. You can hear it at the end of the programme. But it's linked to another story about a chess cheating school. Let me tell you a bit about Henderson Middle School. It's in El Paso, Texas, and it's very good at chess. It's won lots of cups. At a national school event in 2018, it won 2 more trophies. But other schools complained. Cheats, they cried. All regular chess players have what's called an ELO rating, a score based on their past wins and losses. And the tournaments Henderson won were for kids below a certain grade. The accusation was that in the run-up to the tournament, the Henderson kids had deliberately lost games to lower their grades.
This is a practice known as sandbagging.
Roland Walker is the Director of Research at chess.com, the world's largest chess internet site. So sandbagging is the unethical practice of losing on purpose in order to qualify for a future event. Before their trophy-winning performances, Henderson players lost 28 games to 0, even though most of these games they were expected to win. Roland looked at the ELO ratings of all the players involved to work out the chances that Henderson middle school players would lose all their games.
The odds of that happening are 1.55 times 10 to the negative 21. At least that's what I calculate. 10 to the 21 is called a sextillion. So we'd say the odds are roughly 1 in a sextillion of that occurring. It's an unimaginably small number.
1 in a sextillion, that sounds like it's got a lot of zeros in it.
A lot of zeros. So the way I put those numbers into perspective is to think of like other 1-ins, like 1 in 1,000, wow, I'm surprised that happened. 1 in a million, I doubt that would happen. 1 in a billion, this really shouldn't happen. 1 in a trillion, maybe this shouldn't have happened in the history of the Earth. When we get to 1 in a sextillion, we'd say maybe this shouldn't have happened in the history of the galaxy, assuming chess tournaments are played on every planet. It's a galactically small number, if that makes any sense. It's just not something you expect to see.
Roland Walker has a particular interest in chess cheating. 3 million games a day are played on chess.com, the website Roland works for, and there are some tournaments which come with prize money. Mostly, the players can't be seen. They could be anywhere, at work, in the park, in their bathroom. What chess.com needs to know is whether players are cheating by using chess computer programs, sometimes called engines. That's where Roland comes in. He and his team have devised a system called Computer Aggregated Precision Score, or CAPS. It compares human moves to computer moves on a rating from 0 to the top computer move 100.
We can't overstress the differences. Humans and computers play utterly differently. Humans play by planning and by recognizing patterns. The computer plays in a really unusual way. It forgets everything that it knew in between every move. It doesn't really have a plan, which is really quite hard to stomach while it's beating you.
Humans become emotionally committed to a plan. Computers have no such emotional commitment.
An engine will gladly take back a previous move if it realizes in the context of your following moves that it wasn't good, whereas a human has a kind of sticky feeling about their plan. They want to stick with their plan. Once they've moved that rook, they want to keep that rook and follow through on their plan.
The top chess players have titles: FIDE Master, International Master, and the highest of all, Grandmaster. Chess.com runs some tournaments just for title players. Has the CAP system helped to identify any cheats among elite players?
Our team has identified and banned a number into the hundreds. I guess I'm reluctant to say the exact number.
Hundreds of titled players have been caught cheating by your system.
Although there's an interesting twist. When we catch someone cheating, we offer them a chance to confess, admit, and promise never to cheat again. Almost no one who confesses cheats again. And a quite remarkable number of title players have confessed, around 30%.
The CAP system can be used to identify cheats, but it has other uses. The big question it can answer is who was the best player ever? Was it the American Bobby Fischer, the Russian Garry Kasparov, or current world champion Norwegian Magnus Carlsen? At this point, I have a confession. I'm not a disinterested observer. I love chess, and I've always been particularly fascinated with Fischer, probably the most famous and enigmatic figure in chess history. I've even written a book about him. By any standards, an incredible player, Fischer had to beat 3 other challengers before he could take on the then world champion Russian Boris Spassky in 1972. Here's a clip from a 2006 Biography Channel documentary featuring interviews with Fischer's friend Alan Kaufman and, rather strangely, me.
He has to play a series of candidates matches, 3 matches. The first one, he plays Mark Taimanov, wonderful, brilliant Soviet grandmaster. He beats him 6-0. The Soviets can't believe this.
The match was over and Taimanov got up and said, well, I can always play the piano.
Then he plays Bent Larsen, one of the great chess players as well, Danish grandmaster.
He beat him 6-0. You know, that's like knocking out Muhammad Ali with one hand tied behind your back. It can't be done.
Then he plays Tigran Petrosian, smashes him as well. The chess world had never seen a series of games quite like this.
Fischer earned the right to challenge the reigning world champ, 35-year-old Russian Boris Spassky.
Fischer beat Spassky, and for the first time, chess was front-page news around the world. But he never defended his title and barely played again. For a period, he'd seemed invincible. But where does he rank in history? Would Fischer, in his chess-playing days, have beaten today's best player Carlsen? By analysing all their individual moves, the CAP system has the answer.
Well, our calculation says that this is a really cool time to be alive because Magnus Carlsen is the greatest player who lived. At least He's the most accurate player who lived. Surprisingly, perhaps to many people, Carlsen beats Fischer handily.
We can discover other intriguing things about Carlsen's game, like his strength when he's playing speed chess.
So, for example, with caps, I can measure that Carlsen, when he is playing 3-minute chess, is as strong as a typical grandmaster playing classical time controls.
Wow.
So if we could somehow freeze Carlsen in between so that he couldn't think about the board, he could still beat a typical GM taking only 3 minutes to think.
Wow. And here's a tip for you. If you analyse Carlsen's individual games, it turns out he is strongest in the crowded middle game, and his queen moves are particularly accurate. So when I challenge Carlsen to a game, I should try and exchange as many pieces as possible and get into an endgame.
You should, but he's probably listening to this and he'll be on to you.
If he is listening, Magnus Carlsen will be cheered by another piece of statistical news. According to Roland Walker, the champion is getting stronger and stronger. Well, that's it for this week. If Magnus Carlsen or any other listener has another statistics story or question, please contact us at moreorless@bbc.co.uk. I'm David Edmonds. This week, the producer was Darren Graham.